The United States has long been a destination for groups of foreign nationals fleeing hardship or oppression in their homelands. There was the historic Irish potato famine that caused hundreds of thousands to escape poverty and starvation in the mid-1800s. More recently, the U.S. has seen an influx of refugees from gang violence or ethnic cleansing in Central America, the Balkans, and Central Africa. Sandwiched in between, we find many refugees who left Soviet oppression during the 1940s and 50s, among them thousands from the Baltic nation of Latvia. With us in studio today is Pastor Ilze Larsen, a native of Latvia, who shepherds the Evangelical Latvian Lutheran Church here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Ilze, welcome to Feel Like You Belong.
Alan, thank you. I'm very pleased to be here.
Yeah, great. So we were talking earlier and talking about the history of Latvia and the fact that over centuries, lots of armies, the Poles, the Swedes, marching across the small country of Latvia, and then more recently the Soviet oppression of Latvia. Can you talk about how that really affects the culture, the national sensibility of a country when such oppression is constantly going on?
Well, I was born in occupied Latvia from Soviets in 1971. I grew up there and also witnessed the second independence of my country. So growing up, I was like any child. We had our childhoods and we sometimes didn't see all the bad, but we felt, of course, from our parents and families, we sensed it. We maybe didn't see it as much, but we sensed it. And when I think about my people, about my country and our nation, small nation, very small nation compared to the other world nations, what kept us strong and together was spite, I think. We were very, I think also our national genome is built that way because for thousands of years we've been under oppression. Okay. So we are survivors.
You're just kind of a plucky, feisty group.
Yes, okay. Well, in a very positive sense, I think. Mm-hmm. And our second independence actually was fought not with weapons, but with a song. So Latvians are singers. And song is what brings us together. Okay, okay. And so with this sense of unity, after a while, I mean, because the Soviet domination of Latvia was really crushing. What made it so that finally people had to leave in the 40s and 50s? Well, during the Second World War II, there were, I would say, almost three occupations. One was from Soviets, then Germans came in, and then again Soviets. And every time, of course, it was mandatory to really bow to whichever regime it was. And the Latvians fled the horror of the Soviet Union because they also, many of their parents and families experienced 1905 Bolshevik coming into the region, so they knew the bloodshed, and of course many family members were deported in 1941 to Gulag, and many of also my family members. They say there is no Latvian family where somebody wasn't taken in the middle of the night and put in a cattle wagon and transported down to Siberia.
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
So, and then, of course, yeah, Latvians here in Grand Rapids and anywhere in the world where they fled, they ended up going to Germany which was called DP camps. And just recently, again, I heard this term DP camps, which is displaced persons camp, talking about Syria. So they first went there, and then from there, it was either America, Great Britain, Australia, Sweden, those countries. They finally ended up as refugees.
Sure. Now, Latvia has some tradition with the Lutheran Church. How old is that connection?
It's very old. It goes back to almost Martin Luther himself, because when Martin Luther started Reformation in Germany, it came very quickly to Latvia, because at the time Latvia was part of the German Empire. Okay.
So do you sense that the Lutheran Church was one focusing element for Latvian resistance against the Soviets?
In some sense, but I know also that many pastors were deported, many fled. As a matter of fact, actually, I know that many Catholic priests maybe even suffered more than Lutherans.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you are a Lutheran minister.
I am.
But this is a second career for you.
It is.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about your personal evolution in that.
Well, my first education and passion is music, and I play the cello since I was 8. And when I was in music college, that was time of awakening in Latvia, of independence awakening, in late 1980s and early 1990s. So I was far away from home.
And the Iron Curtain came down in 1988?
Yes, it did. Yes, and I remember watching on TV. That was amazing, even things we could watch, that we were allowed to watch or listen to. But I was at this music college, and I started playing cello for the church. Beautiful Baroque church, and the organ actually is one of the oldest Baroque organs in Europe. My teacher, who was teacher of music history, sort of took me under her wing, and there was some connection going on. So she asked me to come and play to the church frequently. And for me as a student, it was easy because I was earning some money for that. And I, at first, wasn't really interested in the message that was given at the church, but then I started listening. And same year as I graduated from the music college, I also was baptized and confirmed, and then it took me another year to figure out that I actually would like to study theology.
Okay. But you are not practicing in Latvia. You have a
Yes.
congregation here in the United States. To talk about that shift.
Well, when I entered my theology studies in Latvia at the University of Latvia, the Faculty of Theology was just reopened after 3 years after, again, the Soviet occupation. So this is time of independence already. And our Archbishop of the Lutheran Church died very tragically and suddenly. And the next who came in place, solely by his own decision, decided that there will not be ordination of women anyhow. And for many of us, there was a time of still great hope, a lot of questions. We were still educating ourselves, but then by the end of my studies, it was apparent that it is not going to happen. And my life little turned upside down at the time too, in 1997, thanks to everything that was going on to the church, in the Latvian Lutheran Church. And so it happened that another door opened, and I'm here now.
And talk a little bit about the Latvians who live in the United States, because again, the earliest ones came in the late 40s and then
Right.
Early 50s. Settled, a lot of them, a big portion of them settled in the Midwest.
They did. And primarily because they decided that seasons and the weather is very much like in Latvia.
Sure.
And I have to tell you that Lake Michigan even looks so similar to the Baltic Sea. So there's
Can't
a lot
see
of
across
sentiments. They can't see across it, no. But a lot of sentiments because of that, yes.
Sure, sure. So this sense of, though, fleeing oppression really creates a sense of solidarity in the community, because
It does.
My experience with the Latvian community is the kids learn Latvian, there are song festivals, there
Yes.
are summer camps, and so being Latvian is really important, especially I think from this history.
It is, and I think Latvians, because of our common history as former slaves in our own country for thousands of years, we find it necessary to be together. And whereas one Latvian, they say there's at least 3 organizations. But Yes, we do come together. We find it necessary to cherish our roots and who we are, where we come from, our language and traditions, which is very rich, very rich. Yeah.
So, and within Michigan, you said that there are 5 Latvian churches.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's my congregation is here in Grand Rapids. Then there is congregation in Kalamazoo, Detroit, Saginaw, and also Lansing. Yes.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. And there are lots of ways to remind you of the culture. Some of it is through traditions, including religion. We mentioned song festivals. I know our friend Sandra is
Yes.
is a singer, but also you had brought an artifact here
Yes.
with you, a special kind of a belt that represents the culture and hangs in many Latvian homes. Can you
It
talk about
does.
that?
Well, this belt is one of many, very many, that Latvian women wear with their ethnographic costumes. This is called Lielvārdes belt. Lielvārde is a region in Latvia. And it's very ancient, and it carries very ancient symbols, actually symbols that many nations share. And
You were talking about
It's-
the significance of the colors.
yes, colors, the red color symbolizes everything that is human and everything as we know it in this world, and the white color symbolizes divine and the universe. And it's really gives to our Latvian families a sense of pride, who we are, always reminds us who we are. And yeah, I inherited particularly this one from a friend of mine. But when this belt is weaved, it's always weaved in different patterns. There's no two alike.
All distinct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So, what would you like the average non-immigrant American to know about Latvian immigrants?
Well, I think we seem very distant, very maybe quiet,
A little reserved?
very reserved, and we may look as we are not welcoming, but in truth, I think we are just making sure our own surroundings are okay.
Well, and maybe you have a few centuries of history
Exactly.
of a little suspicion, like, is this okay?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And also, we are a northern nation. We come from northern Eastern Europe, so we are a little distant at first, but once you get to know us, we are very, very welcoming.
Awesome, awesome. Well, the time has really flown by, but I want to thank you for coming to the studio today and talking with us.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
You bet.
What actually brought us here was we were doing some things over in Uppsala in Sweden that politicians from the US hadn't seen really. They were on a trip in Europe to look at what could be done to get US more energy efficient.